Chapter 73. And after this law, I saw another law dealing with the smaller luminary, which is named the moon. And her circumference is like the circumference of the heaven, and her chariot in which she rides is driven by the wind, and light is given to her in definite measure. And her rising and setting change every month, and her days are like the days of the sun. And when her light is uniform, in other words, full, it amounts to the seventh part of the light of the sun. And thus she rises. And her first phase in the east comes forth on the 30th morning. And on that day she becomes visible, and constitutes for you the first phase of the moon on the 30th day together with the sun in the portal where the sun rises. And the one half of her goes forth by a seventh part, and her whole circumference is empty, without light, with the exception of 1/7 part of it, and the 14th part of her light. And when she receives 1/7 part of the half of her light amounts to 1/7 part and the half thereof. And she sets with the sun, and when the sun rises, the moon rises with him, and receives the half of one part of light. And in that night, in the beginning of her morning, in the commencement of the lunar day, the moon sets with the sun, and is invisible that night with the 14 parts and the half of one of them. And she rises on that day with exactly a 7th part, and comes forth and recedes from the rising of the sun, and in her remaining days she becomes bright in the remaining 13 parts. Chapter 74. And I saw another course, a law for her, and how according to that law she performs her monthly revolution. And all these Uriel, the holy angel who is the leader of them all, showed to me, and their positions, and I wrote down their positions as he showed them to me. And I wrote down their months as they were, and the appearance of their lights, till 15 days were accomplished. In single 7th parts she accomplishes all her light in the east, and in single 7th parts accomplishes all her darkness in the west. And in certain months she alters her settings, and in certain months she pursues her own peculiar course. In 2 months the moon sets with the sun, in those 2 middle portals, the 3rd and the 4th. She goes forth for 7 days, and turns about and returns again through the portal where the sun rises, and accomplishes all her light. And she recedes from the sun, and in 8 days enters the 6th portal from which the sun goes forth. And when the sun goes forth from the 4th portal, she goes forth 7 days, until she goes forth from the 5th, and turns back again in 7 days into the 4th portal, and accomplishes all her light. And she recedes and enters into the 1st portal in 8 days, and she returns again in 7 days into the 4th portal from which the sun goes forth. Thus I saw their positions, how the moon rose and the sun set in those days. And if 5 years are added together, the sun has an overplus of 30 days. And all the days which accrue to it for one of those 5 years, when they are full, amount to 364 days. And the overplus of the sun and of the stars amounts to 6 days. In 5 years, 6 days every year come to 30 days. And the moon falls behind the sun and stars to the number of 30 days. And the sun and the stars bring in all the years exactly, so that they do not advance or delay their position by a single day unto eternity, but complete the years with perfect justice in 364 days. In 3 years there are 1,092 days, and in 5 years 1,820 days, so that in 8 years there are 2,912 days. For the moon alone the days amount in 3 years to 1,062 days, and in 5 years she falls 50 days behind. In other words, to the sum of 1,770 there is to be added 1,062 days. And in 5 years there are 1,770 days, so that for the moon the days in 8 years amount to 2,832 days. For in 8 years she falls behind to the amount of 80 days. All the days she falls behind in 8 years are 80. And the year is accurately completed in conformity with their world stations and the stations of the sun, which rise from the portals through which it, the sun, rises and sets 30 days. Chapter 75. And the leaders of the heads of the thousands, who are placed over the whole creation and over all the stars, have also to do with the 4 intercalary days, being inseparable from their office according to the reckoning of the year, and these render service on the 4 days which are not reckoned in the reckoning of the year. And owing to them men go wrong therein, for those luminaries truly render service on the world stations, one in the first portal, one in the third portal of the heaven, one in the fourth portal, and one in the sixth portal, and the exactness of the year is accomplished through its separate 364 stations. For the signs and the times and the years and the days the angel Uriel showed to me, whom the Lord of glory hath set for ever over all the luminaries of the heaven, in the heaven and in the world, that they should rule on the face of the heaven and be seen on the earth, and be leaders for the day and the night, in other words, the sun, moon, and stars, and all the ministering creatures which make their revolution in all the chariots of the heaven. In like manner 12 doors Uriel showed me, open in the circumference of the sun's chariot in the heaven, through which the rays of the sun break forth. And from them is warmth diffused over the earth, when they are opened in their appointed seasons. And for the winds and the spirit of the dew, when they are opened, standing open in the heavens at the ends. As for the 12 portals in the heaven, at the ends of the earth, out of which go forth the sun, moon, and stars, and all the works of heaven in the east and in the west. There are many windows open to the left and right of them, and one window at its appointed season produces warmth, corresponding as these do to those doors from which the stars come forth according as he commanded them, and wherein they set corresponding to their number. And I saw chariots in the heaven, running in the world above those portals in which revolve the stars that never set. And one is larger than all the rest, and it is that makes its course through the entire world.